What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I wanted to actually go back and take a look at Battlefield 4 and sort of talk about the key points from that game that I think Battlefield 2042 could really learn from to try and get this game into a better state than it currently is. I'm going to be doing this as essentially like a little mini-series, I guess, on the channel. I'm going to be covering Battlefield 4 in this video, like I mentioned, but I'm also going to be doing Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 next. And then if you guys do really enjoy these videos, then I'm definitely open to covering Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 as well, as those are the games that I started with. So if you do end up enjoying the video, be sure to let me know down in the comments, and I will definitely get those extra videos out as well. And if you are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So Battlefield 4 has probably been known as one of the best, if not the best, Battlefield games in the entire franchise. Obviously, it did have a very rough launch, and to be honest, in my opinion, the launch of that game was actually worse than this game because you simply could not play it. It was an absolutely disastrous launch, but it did turn around, and I think most people, or at least a large chunk of the community, do think of Battlefield 4 as the best in the franchise, with obviously Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 1 both being in the mix for that as well. But it's a very highly respected game, it's a very loved game, and with Battlefield 2042 not being in the best state, and obviously there's just not that much to talk about, I did want to go back to Battlefield 4 and kind of just take a look at the key areas of that game that I thought they really did very well that they aren't doing very well in this game. Now, the first thing that comes to mind for me is actually to do with the level design. The maps in Battlefield 4 to me are so memorable. They're some of the best maps in the entire franchise for me, and I think the reason that they are so well designed is that they actually suit infantry and vehicles fairly, rather than the way that it is in a lot of other Battlefield games where sometimes the vehicles have actually been kind of underwhelming, and then sometimes, like in Battlefield 5 and 2042, the vehicles are just completely overpowered. And at least from my perspective, a lot of that is actually to do with the maps, not so much the vehicles themselves. As an example, I think the vehicles in Battlefield 2042 are really not that much better than any of the other vehicles in the previous games. I'd imagine they all probably have around the same amount of health, they all have very similar sort of weaponry and stuff like that, but the fact that these maps are so damn open, it makes it an absolute field day for anyone who plays in a vehicle. And so, like I said, a lot of people sort of point to the vehicles as being the problem, but for me personally, I think it's actually more to do with the level design than it is to do with the vehicles. A lot of maps in Battlefield 4, the ones that I think of are, for example, Dawnbreaker and Zavod. A lot of those maps were just really well designed where you could definitely do very well with a vehicle, and obviously vehicles are kind of always going to do pretty well because they are a vehicle versus a human. Like, obviously they're going to win a lot of battles there, but on some of those maps that I mentioned, there was a lot of close quarters areas that you could really do well in as an infantry player, and you never really had to worry too much about vehicles. Obviously vehicles are always a threat, but a lot of areas of those maps were mostly focused on the infantry gameplay, and then even in the areas where the vehicles could get to, it didn't feel like they were completely overpowered and that they had an absolute sort of monopoly on that area. And like I said, I don't think that was because the vehicles in Battlefield 4 were weaker. I think it was just to do with the map design, and there was kind of always a bit of cover or sort of an escape route for you to take as an infantry player, while equally on the other side, because it's not all about the infantry obviously, on the other side of it, in those situations too where the infantry have somewhere to escape, the vehicle players always had a chance to play it smart and still sort of get those kills. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. The Battlefield 4 level design was so well done in most cases. Obviously there was some maps that they just definitely weren't the best maps, but for me, pretty much every single map in that game, some of the DLC maps I'm not the biggest fan of, but at least the launch maps anyway, there's really not that many that I didn't like, and most of that was to do with just how well balanced they felt. Now, moving on to the next point, this actually comes down to the amount of content that was in Battlefield 4. Now obviously it is a little bit unfair to compare a game that's had its full live service compared to a game that hasn't even started season 1, so it is a little bit of an unfair comparison. But Battlefield 4 had 80 plus weapons and over 30 maps by the end of its lifespan, compared to, what, 22 weapons in 2042 and 7 maps. So that is pretty much 4 times the amount of content in Battlefield 4. Obviously it wasn't to the same scale, so you could probably fit a lot of those Battlefield 4 maps into a map like Breakaway, for example. You do have to somewhat account for the scale, but I do also think that it's not like the scale makes Battlefield 2042 any better, so I also think that kind of negates that a little bit as well. Now, like I said, it is kind of unfair to compare the two because obviously this game hasn't had its live service yet. We will no doubt get more weapons and more maps and stuff like that, but personally I don't see it getting to the sort of the limit that Battlefield 4 had, where, like I said, it was 80 plus weapons. I don't see this game ever having that. Technically, I guess you could say because of Portal there is already like 70 40 something in the game, but in terms of all-out warfare, I think the most we'll ever get is maybe like 35 at the absolute most, so another, 12 or 13 weapons. And something that I think they really could learn from Battlefield 4 is just the amount of content that was added to the game post-launch. The game didn't launch with that much more than what Battlefield 2042 has right now, but the live service for that game was where that game shone, and so I do hope that they take a look at that and realize that continuing to give us that content for a long period of time, that will definitely help this game out quite a bit. Now, the last point that I wanted to talk about, and to be honest, there is a lot more stuff I could go through, but I'm going to try and sort of keep these a little bit shorter because I don't want to just ramble on about how much better Battlefield 4 is than Battlefield 2042. But the final point that I wanted to talk about is essentially the scale balance of Battlefield 4. Now, what I mean by the scale balance, it's probably not the best term to use, to be honest, but I essentially mean that the size of the maps felt really well suited to the 64 players that they had in that game, and there was, I believe there was 32 on previous gen, but I could be wrong. The size of the maps also felt really good for how many vehicles were on the map, and I just think that the size of the game in general, the scale of the maps, the scale of the player count, stuff like that, it all kind of meshed together really well, whereas in Battlefield 2042, with how big Breakaway and Hourglass and maps like that are, even with double the player count now reaching 128 players, a lot of those maps still feel so empty. There's so many times on both Breakaway and Hourglass, and to be honest, this goes for all of the maps in the game, but these are just the two that kind of stick out the worst. There's so many times when you have to run like 200 to 300 meters to get to the next area, yet when you get to that area, it's not like there's a battle between like 30 people going on. There's literally like 5 people at that little battle. It might be 3 on your team and 2 on the other team. You come in, you're the 4th, it's a 4v2, you easily wipe out the other team, and then what are you going to do next? You've kind of got to just go to the next area, or you have to simply wait there and hope that a big group of enemy players kind of swarms the objective and you can try and defend it. So I think that's one thing that Battlefield 4 did really well, was just like everywhere you went, it felt like there was a good little like pack of players always fighting over each objective, whereas in this game, even with double the player count, it just feels like there's actually less players on the map, even though there's obviously not, but they're just so spread out and there's just so much room on the map that it feels like you're not really in an actual battle. You're fighting these little like 2v1 skirmishes, and then after that you kind of have to go hunting for the next kill, and then when you get there, it's just a quick little battle and it's just rinse and repeat. So hopefully for future content, I don't know if they can really fix that too much for the current maps and stuff in the game. Obviously they are working on the map, so maybe they can try and fix that through those changes that they're making, but hopefully at least for future content they can really scale down the size of the map and sort of focus on, having less flags and just having it more like congested, so that when you go to an area there is literally like 20 people fighting. Not only is that a lot more fun, but then the more people that are there, the more chance that their teammates can then spawn on them, and then so even when you wipe out the 10 enemies who are there, they've probably got 10 teammates who have spawned on them, and they kind of just replace them, and it just feels like there's always a fight going on. It's not just like one team wipes the other team and then they've got to get like 10 vehicles and come all the way across the map and try and take that over again. And yeah, I really hope that they kind of look at Battlefield 4 and the scale of the game compared to how many players were in it and stuff like that, and just try and use that as a bit of inspiration for future content. But anyway guys, that is going to do it for this one. I'm definitely keen to hear your thoughts on what you guys thought Battlefield 4 did really well and that you think 2042 can learn from, so be sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments. Like I said, there's so much other stuff to go over and I'm sure you guys will make some really good points, so be sure to leave a comment down below. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. If you want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then do consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.